change is possible and change is happening. So I would say, get out there and try and be the change you want to see for the future of Europe and for the UK.
Hello, Jacob. Thank you very much for agreeing to take part in our Brexit reality portrait videos. Could you please start today's video by briefly introducing yourself?
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. So my name is Jacob. I have grown up in Sweden, and so I'm half Swedish and half British. I returned to the UK to study in 2017, and I'm currently in my final year of my undergraduate music degree at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire.
Great, thank you very much. So, as with all our videos, we always open with the first and the same main question. So, what, Jacob, does Brexit mean to you?
Yeah, so Brexit to me is a sort of it's a way that someone's decided to rob young people of opportunities in a way for something that they didn't vote for. And it's a showcase of how far populism can go and how much it can ruin people's lives, because Brexit is going to have and has already had such a massive impact on the lives of young people, meaning that it's so much less common now that anyone will be coming from Europe to study in the UK, but also vice versa, because of all the massive tuition fees and things like that. When in reality, I'm sure that most people would appreciate having a greater mixing pot of people from different countries to study with and to work with. And so Brexit has really robbed us of those opportunities for meeting people. And so for me, I think it's something that was really done against the wills of most young people.
Yes, that's very interesting. I completely understand, speaking as a fellow young person who was too young to vote in the referendum. You mentioned a lot in your answer, the loss of opportunity. How have your opportunities been affected?
So for me personally, as a Swedish citizen, I do consider myself to be in a very, very privileged and lucky position. But I also have a strong sense of feeling of a loss for sort of the opportunities that I could have had with, for example, as a musician, taking chamber groups on tours around Europe, or taking my friends to play music in Sweden. And these kind of opportunities for inviting people from Sweden, it becomes a lot more difficult. And I think it's a loss of cultural exchange is one of the key losses. I personally think it's so wrong that it will basically be reserved for those who are rich to be able to have the opportunities to, for example, study. Let's say they want to study a master's in Europe. It's going to become so much more expensive, and if Brexit was really supposed to be like the sort of working class revolt against the British elite or whatever it was supposed to be, it's bitterly failed and is basically, it's going to be okay for those who are super rich because they can get by with doing whatever. But for those who would have relied on sort of EU funding and all these things, they're totally at a loss right now.
Yes, I totally agree, especially as someone who has, again, benefited from European funding schemes when studying. Again, you mentioned studying. Do you think you will continue to study in the UK?
As a musician and as a creative practitioner, wanting to sort of present myself in the best way in the ever-changing market, which is, performing arts, unfortunately, at this time with COVID, I think really those who are the most successful are studying in Germany, because there are so many more opportunities throughout all of Europe, and there's so many more orchestras, and having that cross-cultural and cross-language thing. Increasingly it feels like it's becoming that the UK is a place where people study to work in the UK, whereas I imagine before Brexit it would have been much more likely that people would have a stronger cultural exchange and be able to sort of work more freely between countries, and that's something that I think Brexit has really taken away, and that's why I'm more likely to actually steer away from a course of continuing to study in the UK for my masters.
Obviously, you are studying music and you plan to go into a career in music. And it sounds like you think Brexit will heavily impact the music industry. Could you please explain why you think that is?
Sure. I mean, one of the great things about Europe is that it's actually quite small, and it doesn't take a lot of time to sort of drive or take a train between different cities and things like that. And that's why it's so important to have that interconnectivity. And for many sort of not just classical music, should I say chamber ensembles, but also from popular music like bands, rock bands, etc., have all made a big start of their careers from these sort of playing in grassroots venues, playing in pubs, and that's not just throughout Europe, but also European bands coming to the UK and touring all around. And I think, yeah, Brexit isn't going to mean that music isn't going to exist in that way, but it's going to mean that it's going to be a lot easier for people to not take that step and not say, hey, I want to try this out and see how it goes, because it's going to be the larger bands and the larger ensembles with more money that will be able to continue doing it, albeit with a lot more hassle and paperwork. But those who would just do it to try out and maybe find a lot of success, it's going to be a big struggle. And I think, that's one of the beauties of touring through Europe is how many grassroots bands and ensembles find great success and find many opportunities, and taking that away will be a great cultural loss. And this is really why importantly we need to find a temporary solution right now where there will be visa free travel for touring musicians. Absolutely.
Yes, yes, thank you. Exactly. I can definitely agree with you. The importance of grassroots institutions and bands and groups and helping young children progress throughout their education in music. Having been part of that sort of system myself, how do you think it's going to affect our futures?
Yeah, I think in the short term, it's definitely going to be a lot more difficult to do the things that we once took for granted. So easy travel, easy working. Of course, things are going to be more okay than maybe the worst case scenario, because I think it benefits, more people than not to actually have big cultural exchange and have, social mobility and work, moving labor forces. And, it's so important, really, from any economic perspective. But I do think that we're young and we have a big role to play in our own futures. And while we didn't have the vote in 2016 when we were taken basically against our will out of a union that maybe a lot of people didn't know a lot about. So I think it's so important to continue doing things like this, where we're actually educating people about, what is the European Union? Why is it important to be part of it? And I think there is a chance that we will be able to overcome this and actually stand together and continue fighting to rejoin the union, at least in some form, because I really don't think, I think we'll see the truths expose themselves after COVID is sort of more, off the table.
Well, we are now coming to our last question, and you've been a very, very passionate and great interviewee, and it's clear to see that you feel very strongly that the UK should be part of the European Union, to really, really feel part of Europe, and create better futures for young people. So, our last question. If you had one message to give to everyone watching today about Brexit, what would it be?
Yeah, yes, thank you very much for having me for this interview. And I really think that I would say is don't give up and don't give in to sort of populist demands taking countries in completely wrong directions, because change is possible and change is happening. So I would say, get out there and try and be the change you want to see for the future of Europe and for the UK.
Great, thank you. What a positive note to end this interview on. You've been great. Thank you, Jacob Perkins.